start. This is not a formal meeting. We're just having a workshop going through where we're at in the budget as of today. And so I sent the schedule out to council yesterday and prior to, so we'll start with Bobby kind of going over general budget revenue expenditure pieces, and then we can move into departments. If you will, guys, we're going to move the mayor's office to tomorrow. I have Alex doing some other things this morning, so we'll move that to tomorrow. But other than that, everything will run in the same order that we have it in. And so, Bobby, you can start us off.
Sure. Good morning.
Let me ask a question, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I've misplaced it. Do you have the list of, in the order that the committees will come?
I have one. We can get a copy run off.
Please. It is? All right.
Yeah, I sent an email yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Probably what I'm going to do is just take a couple of minutes and speak more to the budget process and where we are, rather than like overall revenues and expenditures. Today and tomorrow are designed primarily an opportunity for the council members and the department heads to kind of engage each other on the department specific budgets. I would, and process-wise, I would remind, for the benefit of everybody, the budget started, as we know, the process anyway, quite some time ago, and it started with the city council conducting or having a facilitator conduct a goal setting and planning session. After that, we started the process of soliciting input from the directors and quantifying that. I guess, a week ago from tomorrow, so last Wednesday or Thursday, the mayor and the city council had a budget work session, which was about half a day, and I think that was some productive time. Today and tomorrow, again, are the budget hearings with the department heads, and again, the purpose of that is kind of some direct interaction and engagement. So it gives the department heads the opportunity to kind of update you on not just their budget, but their operation plans for next year, and an opportunity for you to ask questions and engage with the department heads. We actually have a budget committee, an important, I would say, budget committee meeting on Thursday of this week. And then the month of May will continue the budget process, and it is continues to be a working process. And we'll see what meetings need to take place and exactly what that process needs to look like during the month of May. But we'll be very busy working on continuing our work on the budget during the month of May. And I do believe that we're on track. Some decisions have to be made, but we're on track, and we need to adopt a budget during the month of June. So that's kind of the timeline. Just as one note, the information that you have to look at today, and I know we have some departments represented today who have various grants. At this point in the budget process, we have yet to meet with those particular directors about grants. So when you look at the reports this morning, the grant revenues and expenses for next year are not included in these particular numbers. That would not be material financially to the bottom line, but it may look a little odd when you see the blanks on the reports and everything. And I guess my final comment would be what I've shared before, and I do think it's important for everybody to understand this. If the budget was something that could be done in a day or two, and we would do it in a day or two. But the budget process for the city, and frankly for other organizations that I've worked with during my career, it's definitely a very fluid process. It's a day-by-day process. Like I can tell you that in the last 24 hours, actually since the reports have been sent out, in the last 24 hours there has been corrections made. I've been made aware of some corrections that are in the report that still need to be made. We've had update and input from directors on things that have either changed in their initial request or they need to add something maybe that wasn't included to begin with. Since we met a week ago, Mayor Conger has spent quite a bit of time on the budget and has made some adjustments from the numbers at that point. Another important activity that takes place each day is our review and update of where we think we are this year financially and where we think we'll end up at June 30th. You know, we have more information, more current information. We learn more really each day on that. As we discussed last week, there are a number of expenses that do not lend themselves to a straight projection or annualization of annual expenses. And quite frankly, this year has been a busy year with the city. And one thing that we're trying to get our arms around now are, particularly on the expense side, through budget amendments and other activities, our expenses, there's been a lot of activity and changes in the expenses over the course of the year, right? Happened at different times. So kind of understanding how that's going to impact our final numbers at the end of the year, that's something we're working on each day. So I would just suggest to everybody that we accept that it's a fluid and a learning process, and we're working hard on it every day. And again, I think we're on track to be where we need to be in June. So,
Thank you, Bobby.
Yep.
Any questions from council for Bobby before we get into the department-specific budgets?
Yeah, Bobby, could you kind of just run us at a high level through kind of where we are in the budget summary?
In the budget what?
Your budget summary,
Yeah, okay, so,
revenue and expenses, just kind of
Yeah.
high level
yeah,
before we start
and I
diving
will,
in.
again, the city is on track to go live with a new technology platform in July, and it is desperately needed. And we're all looking forward to that. Unfortunately, right now, our system is such that when you just kind of want to look at where we are from an income statement standpoint or a budget standpoint, we have to compile that manually, right, on Excel spreadsheets. So I've got this this large spreadsheet with all the funds on it that we have worked with at least the years I've been here. And before, in preparation for today's meeting, I started to fill in some of the numbers, right? So since we met last week as a group, we have been able to project, and we've done a lot of work on the debt service fund, for instance. So we have that, and we have the solid waste fund, and we have the general fund numbers. Now, one piece that's missing in this work are the formulas for this work would be, it's important that we know what our ending fund balance was at the end of last fiscal year, which would be FY '22. They're pending audit results, right? So I want to wait until we have the final audit results to drop those numbers in. So we can't project, right, ending projected fund balance in this year's budget until we're confident that we've started with the audited numbers versus our internal numbers, if that makes sense. But where we stand right now on the general fund, we're projecting about $83 million in general fund revenues for next year and about $79 million at this point. Now, the mayor and I were talking before the meeting started. Everyone needs to be aware that there are updates that need to be made to like next year's expense number. Some of those updates will come from better numbers and corrections that I know about. Some would be from potential costs next year that we've not had this year that are not yet in those numbers, if that makes sense. From a solid waste standpoint, right now, we've got $14 million in revenue and about $13 million in expense for next year at this point. And from a debt service standpoint, we have now about $12.2 million in revenue next year and about $12.5 million in expense. You may recall, last week, we discussed the fact that FY '24 is a peak in terms of our debt service requirements, and that number drops off dramatically.
Drops off to 6.3,
Yeah,
I believe.
6.5 million in FY '25, but FY '24, it sort of peaked, right? And we do have, right now, as I mentioned, about 12.2 in revenue, about 12.5 in expenses. However, we have a fund balance in debt service going into this year, right, that I believe will be adequate. I know it'll be adequate to fund this increase in expenses for next year. Now, as far as capital outlay, ARPA funds, we collectively together, I know you are going to review the capital budget for next year today and tomorrow, and some decisions will need to be made about the capital outlay budget and a review of the ARPA budget for this year and how much money and what projects are left over for next year and what projects will carry over. That work needs to be completed before we can move ahead much further on either the capital or the ARPA fund. There are some other minor funds, like the police drug funds, for instance, the community development fund, the CRA fund, the landfill fund. We have the information to process those budgets for next year. It's just not been a priority up to this point. So, does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one question associated with the annualized solid waste FY
That's
'23
the revenue side of that.
on the revenue side.
Yeah, that's not correct.
Okay, just want to make
I
sure.
think what's missing, yeah, we're aware of that. We need to do a little bit more research, but it appears that what is missing is a timing issue, because we have to do an accrual, particularly at the end of the year. We don't, in governmental accounting, it's called a modified accrual basis. It's not a full accrual basis of accounting. And when these annualized numbers were projected, I'm pretty sure there's at least 1 month worth of residential garbage billing and possibly the commercial garbage billing that wasn't in the number. So we're aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I believe at the end of the day, the revenue for this year annualized will look a lot like the projected revenue for next year. I mean, there's no rate increases in next year, and they update the volume numbers, that type of thing, but that's what the situation is with
So the
solid waste.
14 million is correct.
It's more correct than 11.2, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And guys, before we get in, Bobby touched on the capital budget. If you want to look at the capital budget spreadsheet, you'll see down through there, you have the spreadsheet, the graph, and then out to the side, the vehicle costs for each department. And so what I did is pulled out every vehicle for each department, including 3 years' worth of patrol vehicles, which will give, hopefully, us onto the way of providing take-home vehicles for all of our officers. And we have a total number there, and so I talked with Bobby about what that cost is, at $3.1 million. But what we want to do to equip, one, the goal is to get officers take-home vehicles, and two is how we just calculate that and how we pay for that. So there may be an opportunity from surplus at the end of this year. You know, we have some other moving parts going on right now with the 85 TIF district, and hopefully within the next 45 days we'll have a big announcement to make on our 223 site, and so there's still some other opportunities there. But I pulled the vehicles out just to give a solid number, so we're not just looking at the police department vehicles separately, but all the vehicles together and kind of make it a grouping. So just keep that in mind as we move forward too as well. They're not pulled out of the budget, they're just pulled to the side for a grouping of cost-wise.
Mayor Conger, if I could, just for the benefit of everybody, and these are not final numbers, and I'm speaking without having the numbers in front of me. The capital outlay fund, the way that works though, unlike the debt service fund where we have accumulated, a fund balance in recent years, intentionally, we've been working to do that. The capital outlay fund is not that way. When you consider carryover items from year to year, and not everything can be carried over, but a lot of budget items can be carried over. And of course, those have to be paid for from fund balance when they're carried over, right? So when you consider the net of all of that, the capital outlay fund, it does have a positive fund balance, but it's really a small, it's not something that would be large enough for us to use in terms of funding something beyond what we budgeted in the past and what is going to be carried over. Does that make sense? Okay.
All right, any other questions for Bobby before we get down to department specific? All right, first one on the list is city council, and this is pretty self-explanatory there. We are, if you look, I think I'll speak to as best I can. If y'all have any comments, this is more for y'all to decide, but regular salaries include council salaries, and then the administrator, her benefits as well, postage, all that. But you look at the item, the travel and training, I know we didn't use as much this year, but it was determined last budget cycle to allocate enough for every council member to have some funds for travel and training. I know we'll have several new council members come on in July, and so there's opportunities with Municipal League and MTAS to do some training for them. So I would recommend to the council to keep that $25,000 in there for travel and training especially for the new council members to utilize those opportunities.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think now more than any time over the last 3 years, it's appropriate to have some funding available for that.
I want to inquire about the postage, and I'm using my own experience. When I came involved, I wanted to reach out to my constituents, and I didn't have email addresses, so therefore I wrote them. And there are about 3,000 people in my district, and if you mail them a letter at 50 cents each, that's $1,500 right there. And the new coming council members, I would imagine, don't know, but they may want to reach out. And it seems to me that $2,000, if they want to reach out. Now, I won't be using postage anymore because when I reached out the first time, I was able to get a lot of email addresses. And so therefore, I'm contacting them by email. But for persons on the council, there are 9 of us that need to use the U.S. mail to get in contact with constituents. It seems to me $2,000 is too little for that.
You have a recommendation, Councilman?
I would go up to a minimum of $4,000, and I would divide it by 9 so that each council member would have an allocation, because some council members may not use it at all, and some may, use up to the limit. So I would suggest $4,500.
All right. We'll look at that. We'll add that in there. Okay.
Ms. Marquisha, typically what are those, what's that postage? What do you assign to that? Is that letters that are sent out by council members, or
Yes.
cards or sympathy cards and that type of stuff? Okay. I was gonna look real quick at the salaries, make sure. I guess, Bobby, we've now got the council in there. And do we have the beer board budgeted in there this year?
We do.
Okay. That's the only questions I had on city council.
The variance on furniture, is that just timing, the annualized number? It's like 30 36%.
I'm sorry, the variance.
The difference, the 36% difference on the
Oh, the
furniture
total? No,
is the total.
That's the total, yeah, one,
Yeah, that's-
yeah. Furniture's no.
Right, that's just timing, right?
that's the total, not furniture.
It's the total.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
total,
yeah.
I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
just-
I
yeah,
didn't see that
there's
line
no-
there.
there's no line
Oh,
there,
okay.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, Gotcha.
Gotta keep you looking, man.
So is the biggest difference that we didn't spend much of the travel and training, basically?
Mhm.
Correct.
And then an increase in salaries?
Yeah, the increase,
I've got it here.
yeah.
It's about a
Hold on.
12,000 increase in salaries.
Well, the beer board doesn't
I think the beer board's,
consume as much as what's budgeted.
yeah, the beer board's built into that. And so it's a placeholder for the beer board to hold, and they haven't used all that.
Okay.
The beer board, I think budget's up to 2 special meetings, or 1 or 2 per month, and that's not typically how often we'd meet.
Okay. All right, any other questions regarding the council?
Just a curiosity, the computer information system services, it's 50%, almost 50% increase. I'm making some assumptions of what that is, but could you tell me?
Yeah, we'll have to get new equipment for the new council members.
Okay.
Bunch of y'all ain't running again, so we gotta get new equipment for new folks. All right, anything else? All right. City council done. Move on to, I would say recovery court, but Haley Cole is a new baby, so she's not here. And you look at recovery court, there's not much difference in city court. Got a representative from city court here.
If I could comment on city court,
Okay.
a couple of things that I know about. Again, work to be completed, right? But when you look at salaries for this current year, we had a former employee at city court that resigned, and there's some compensation related to that in this year's numbers that has been annualized. At the same time, I'll just speak to this with city court, but what the comment would really apply to all of the departments. It's difficult to compute the salary budgets here at the city, like it is for any business, for a myriad of reasons. The numbers change, pay period to pay period, that type of thing. So we are in the process of, I feel pretty good about next year's salary budget with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions right now. However, we are continuing to kind of confirm numbers of people, right, and rates regarding salaries for next year. And that would be true, that would be true at city court as it will be with other departments as well. Not to get ahead of or raise an issue that's really not on the table right now, but I am aware that city court is in the process of evaluating a new computer system potentially for next year, and we'll need to finalize the status of that. But the cost of that would not be in the city court budget at this point as well, so, okay.
That was a question that I was gonna raise. As I think we have processed here, this body's processed through and made a recommendation, and Ms. Loon has gone out. And I think that individual will be studying them over the next couple of months, weeks maybe. Should we budget, or how do we wanna handle that?
I don't think we know the number.
Yeah. Okay, so
We have to get a recommendation from the number to,
on IT services or
Yeah.
any other, so we'll kind of wait until we hear back on that, on staffing and IT and any other needs that they may have that arise from that
yeah,
study.
and I think worst case scenario, I mean, what I don't wanna do is falsely budget for something and then not need enough. I mean, worst case scenario, if the consultant hasn't come back by end of June, then we would have to budget amendment for that particular item, and then staffing after the budget year starts. But we don't want to just arbitrarily put something in there and not need it, or arbitrarily put something in there and still need to do a budget amendment. So with the numbers that we have and what we have in place, then we can do that and make a budget amendment accordingly if we need to. Hopefully we won't have to. Hopefully it'll get done before then.
Okay.
Just want to let all council know that all department heads were notified multiple times about this meeting today. Office of Innovation.
All right, good morning. So this will be a new department, obviously.
Page 4. Page 4.
Page 4, yeah. So in the 4 years that I've been here, I've brought in over $700,000 in grant revenue, which has allowed us to start new programs, our financial empowerment program, our Love Your Block program that serve residents, and consequently bring on more staff. So our staff has grown. We feel like it makes the most sense to be separated out of the mayor's office, focus on our programmatic work, and be able to work across departments. So the budget before you, salaries and such, that covers myself and Claire. It's a little different than what I proposed. I think some adjustments were made based on projected growth, I guess, or somebody else. But Christiana and our financial empowerment director and Abby, our Love Your Block director, their numbers are not included in this because they're paid out of ARPA and grants, so it's down later on.
It's on page 5, so when you get done with yours, you want to talk about that, and when you
Yeah.
just, okay.
So as Mr. Bobby mentioned, we're still working on the grant budget, so what I have in my records does not match up here, but we'll consolidate that later on. So just know that Abby's paid out of ARPA, Christiana is paid out of the grant for the financial empowerment. And we also have an open position with the Love Your Block Fund. So rest of it, I projected based on taking 50% of the mayor's office staff. So what would that cost look like? To Councilman Donnell's point, the postage, it's 19 cents to send out a postcard. So if you look out sending out a mailer once annually, that's kind of where the cost comes from. The only other notable thing in here, apart from just realistic projections, is that we did add some funding in for public art based on community demand, based on where we've seen the growth and how we're going with quality of life initiatives. So that is an overview.
So how many employees total would be in this department?
I have,
Is it 2 or 3?
well, are you talking about out of the budget or out of staff that
Oh, yeah,
would
out of the budget.
supervise? Out of the budget right now, just 2.
Okay.
Yep, I think it's performance director, community development director, and then governmental affairs is included in that.
Okay, that one will
Yeah,
go
these
roll
will
off
be
because
taken
that
out, yeah.
employee has since resigned. So
Okay.
since this was presented.
Okay. So
But
we,
then the other positions
Then you said
would
you
be
had-
in your office, but paid out of different buckets.
Yeah, they're on
Yes.
page 5, so that's Love Your Block and financial empowerment on page 5.
And then one is in ARPA too. But again, we have to
Yeah.
consolidate. Some of that's not reflecting right, so that'll come back before you later on whenever we can sit down on grants.
Yeah, some of those are directly paid from a grant.
Okay.
Could you expound upon the the $50,000 public art initiative?
Yeah, we just looking at other communities and seeing like what would be an actual sizable investment in art. I mean, the Southwest mural alone cost about $10,000. So in order to have public art that and to pay artists fairly, we felt like that was a good rate. So it's a proposal. I mean, y'all can discuss it.
Yeah, so we have a Public Arts Commission, and the council adopted an art district several months ago, and so, artists are not self-funded, and so how we look at public art, especially in the arts district, and expanding beyond that, this will help with some of those projects and help with the Arts Council and locally to provide local artists an opportunity to have public art installments.
I also realized in my notes I put arts district signage in there because we did not really do any of that whenever we designated the arts district. And so I've heard from multiple business owners that they would like to see that. And maybe updating some of the banners. I mean, y'all see them. They're in bad disrepair, and that doesn't look good on our town.
Last few storms took care of that pretty good.
And so on that public art again, is that up to, or do you think, or do you have plans for that many projects?
I'm just creating a fund,
Okay,
so,
okay,
yeah.
no worries.
We have no fund right now for public art, and so it's kind of difficult to have a public art initiative with no money behind it. And we've had wonderful private partnerships to sponsor some of these murals, but if the city wants to advance an initiative, we have to put some money in the pot.
Well, one suggestion that we saw in Greenville was using public money to leverage that private money for a match, you know, whatever we could, since we have generous private donors, to couple those two things together to really push that even further.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we good?
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Going to Communications, Public Affairs, and that is on page 2, I believe. Nope. Page 1.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this department would also be a new department. Kenny and I work closely together with communications. We help, we've redesigned the website, we've made a social media presence for the city, and you know, communication is constantly changing, rapidly changing, and so we've got to stay up to times on our communication levels. We want to create a department so that we have a centralized effort. We have a lot of information that comes from the mayor's office, but not all the information needs to come from just the mayor's office. So we want to work closer with our departments and you know, increase some funding for us so that we can have the equipment and we can get some new advancements to our communication skills.
And if you've all seen the communication pieces from Keep Jackson Beautiful, from Parks and Recreation and Parks, and other departments, that's all come from Kenny and Amy. So they've branched out and they're helping out other departments, and then had some workshops and trainings with other departments, police department, fire department, on their communications as well.
How many employees do you have in this department?
We're asking for 3. It would be myself, Public Affairs, Kenny, Communications Director, and Gail Tacker Gilbert. She does our community events.
And outside of salaries and benefits, are there departmental needs you talked about? Some.
Yes, I submitted a proposal. I believe the office is still just working on the numbers so that they can present that to you guys.
Okay. Amy, what are some initiatives, some plans y'all have? I mean, I know y'all do a great job with social media, the newsletter, things like that, but what plans do you have for the future to, you know, make communications a bit more robust for the city?
Yeah, so we actually visited leaders and the school system to talk about doing some podcasts. I know that you guys had visited Greenville, and they had a lot of efforts. We're in communication with them to see how they're reaching their people. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, as far as the podcasting goes, like I said, we visited Leaders Credit Union and the Jackson-Madison County School System. They have a really good podcasting, and that's one thing that I always wanted to do. I just want to be able to do it at a greater capacity now. As you know, I come from a journalism background, so and I've seen in these 4 years that communication is one thing that a lot of people want more of, and so podcasting, at least probably starting off once a month, but just having the equipment to do it at a scale for our city, so that we can compete with other cities getting information out, again, for all departments, not just from the mayor's office, but for all the departments. I've got plans, ideas for that podcast.
One thing that we've discussed over the years, and I was hoping that we would be able to deliver this over the last 4 years, but we're still kind of finalizing this budget process, is communicating the budget. And if you go to some of these other cities, you can see kind of a narrative budget that shows it's not just a collection of spreadsheets, it's a communication of what the city's committing to do for that year. I'm curious if your department would be able to handle that. You know, in the past, a couple years back, I personally put out a bunch of stuff and worked with the mayor to push, if you recall, the budget software thing where you could interact with it. But we really need somebody in the city to help kind of take control of that and start to develop materials to communicate out what we're doing to the general public.
So most of the, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Most of the information that we receive are spreadsheets. So what you've seen, what the public sees, what they're able to view and understand is what we've created from a spreadsheet or just some notes or just an approval from the city council minutes.
Yeah,
So
I think
believe
once
that
the
we'd be
process
capable.
gets better for us, it gets better for the public, yeah.
I was just gonna offer, I think Brian's here, but, I think this coming Friday morning, part of the Tyler Munis package that we've purchased includes, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a module. And we're gonna actually see that demoed, I believe, this coming Friday morning, that, remember the software, I can't remember what.
Here comes Brian.
Yeah, what Brian.
Yeah.
The other one, Brian's
The
coming.
balancing act software, where it's an interactive
Yeah,
software.
that's the way I understand it,
Yeah.
yeah. It's,
Morning. The software we're going to demo comes with part of Tyler Munis. It's called Socrata, I believe is what they call it. But it'll create an interactive version of the budget, the real-time numbers. Once we launch July 5th, which is our go-live for Phase 1, it'll have something to plug into. And at that point next year, the expectation would be we would do budgeting through the software. So not only would they get to see the expenditures in real time, but they would see the budgeting process in real time. And it would provide graphs and things like that. So there wouldn't be as much individual time have to be spent to update it like we had to do with Balancing Act, where we're manually plugging those numbers in. It should pull from the system as we go along. And we are gonna, that is something we purchased, and they indicated that the implementation time was maybe just a couple of weeks once we went live on Phase 1.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful in the future for people to be able to have a visual representation of where these dollars are, where they're appropriated.
It's hard to pull it and make a graphic when you're right on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I would share with the council, I've met some of my peers across the state, and most of those cities actually publish. They may have the software, but not everybody's comfortable on the computer. Most of those cities actually publish a budget book
Right.
each year that's available. They look a little different from city to city, but it's the opportunity to offer comment and commentary, on the budget, then select budget statements would actually be published in there, so.
That's what I was
Yeah.
more speaking to. There's some context that's
Yeah.
provided to the
Right.
The
numbers.
narrative piece of it.
That's right, yeah. That'd be a hope that we could start working towards that as a communication piece to the community.
I would love to sit down with the council members to get your ideas of ways that we can reach your districts, a little better. If you need help with that, that's a great advice. We can definitely talk about doing that.
Okay.
I'm curious about one thing. We see several things in the budget about marketing, publicity, those type things. We've already talked with, Mr. Donnell mentioned the fact of the ability to reach out. He reached out by postage, but then first thing he did was acquire email addresses. How many active email addresses do we communicate with today?
Well, we have a
So-
city newsletter that sends out every week, and we have over 5,000 subscribers on that newsletter. And then how many?
As far as my role with communicating with media, I have at least 20 or 30. I have all media, radio, TV, newspaper, and even school system, other entities like our Jackson Home that get all the public notices and press releases, including you all, mayor's office as well. So between that, the word gets out to the public.
How many?
How many?
Yes,
for,
how many actual email addresses do we have for citizens of this community?
Oh, citizens.
Yes.
So
I think she said 5,000.
she has 5,000
for the
for, as
newsletter.
far as your districts go.
Yeah, it's a black hole.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could have some level of initiative to try to grow that. over the next year, because that is a more cost-effective way of, and more timely way of communicating to individuals. I know I've worked with those things before, and I know it's sort of like carrying feeding of a email list. You don't want to send it out, send everything out to every group at every time. You have to be strategic about it, but we've got to grow that list to be effective and progressive here.
Absolutely.
And Kenny, back to that email list, is there any way to, could you break it down by district and share that with council members?
So there are ways on our website that we can create forms. So if there's a way that we can have citizens in districts, if they want to go to the city council page and input their email, we can have it set up to where those emails come directly to you. So for your district, if I live in your district, I'll put my email address in there, and that email will come to you. And however long we can compile into an Excel sheet, and I can get it to you. Or those emails can come straight to you as well, so that you can have that list as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine it. So I mean, if you just have emails for now, then yeah, there's no addresses, names.
We can do.
Any way you could sort those?
Yeah, we can do that. So on the website currently, there's a form page that we have, and we can set it up to where they can put their name, address, email address, what district they're in, and it can compile into an Excel sheet, and we can spread it out, separate it into districts, and we can get that information
Because I
to
mean,
each
for
one.
council members who, you know, would like to have some opportunities beyond just social media and the postage system, which is, you know, as we discussed, pretty expensive. You know, email costs nothing, so if we could work together to
Yeah,
share some of those resources and information, I think it would help council.
okay.
Let me follow up on that, because that's a very good idea. You said you could do that. When could you do it?
So on the website, we could talk about, it can be done soon. We can just get the word out. Say, if you as a member of the public, go to the city council's page on the website, fill out this form with your name, email address, so your councilman will have your email address. And
Y'all
again,
can create the form today, right? I mean, it's,
Yes.
yes, yeah, we can create the form today.
Okay, so we could have it like that, say, in 10 days?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes.
would you please do that?
yes,
That's very
I can
helpful.
take care of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
anything else from the council regarding communications, public affairs? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Mrs. Lynn Henning with Human Resources. I feel like I need to stand.
You like me to stay?
I feel like I need to stand when you come up.
Good morning. Good
Morning.
Good morning.
What page?
Human Resources is, yeah, that page. 8. There you go. Any questions from Mrs. Henning regarding Human Resources?
How many employees do you have in your office?
3 full-time, 1 part-time.
Okay, and you make 5? Or you
No, sir, I make 4.
Make 4, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank
Are
you.
we adding employees this
So-
coming year?
I'm sorry.
Are we adding employees?
We have budgeted, budgeting for a full-time position. I'm trying to hold on to Ms. Henning as long as I can, and, but she insists on budgeting for a full-time position for her role. And so I've accommodated that, but, we haven't found an adequate replacement yet.
Okay.
If you're looking for an adequate replacement, you may not ever,
Adequate.
but,
It's
yeah.
not gonna happen.
So that's where we see the variance there, is
Yes.
the budgeting for a full-time role
Mhm.
in the salaries, okay. What,
Are you needing
professional
professional
service,
service?
yeah, that was where my eyes went. Where we
For
previously.
85,000 last year, but nothing for this coming year.
Mhm. Do we know where those expenses come from?
I would point out, I'm not familiar with the detail of this particular account, but this would be an example of one that probably does not lend itself to straight annualization, right? And this would be an example of one, before we get through, we'll try to find out exactly what's in that number and project a more realistic number for this.
You're saying
for
it
this
could have been a 1 month expense that's been multiplied over
Multiplied
the.
four times, yeah.
I know we did have, I think, a
The
couple of
wage,
payments.
wage and
Yeah.
salary stuff.
We did have a couple of payments,
Oh, that's what it was, yeah.
the run out on the wage and salary study.
I think that was
earlier in the year.
21,000 we paid in this fiscal year, and so annualized.
I think there may have been two, actually, but it.
Because it doesn't look like there's
Likely
much,
Okay.
what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
there's really not much variance, but I think that's the difference, is the salary position that's being held versus the professional services.
Yeah, that was
that
the salary study piece that we had to do a budget amendment for at the beginning of last year.
If I could, this might be a good opportunity to get this out there. Not to shine a light on work that we still need to do, right, or the complexity of the budget, but I would point out, since we met last week, we have adjusted to a more accurately the cost of next year's health plan, and we've in fact allocated that back to the department's benefit lines based on the numbers of employees that they're budgeting. So that side, the FY '24 number is pretty solid. However, the FY '23 number, let me just say that historically, the city has had what I would call kind of a unique way of accounting for benefit cost. And so in FY '23, we budgeted for and have made the effort to kind of use a more traditional way of accounting for employee benefit costs. And part of that involved us taking the city's actual net cost each month for, let's just say, for the health plan. That would be claims paid plus administrative costs, and allocating that back to the department's benefit line, right? So we started trying to accomplish that in '23. We've had some vacancies, and so I do know that some of the benefit costs for FY '23 has not been fully allocated back to the departments yet. It doesn't change total cost for the city. It's just when you look at some of the benefit lines, probably FY '23 annualized benefits are probably understated a little bit. We'll correct that before we get to the completion of the budget, so.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. And that would apply, that's not HR specific, that would be for all.
Every
right,
department, all
Yeah.
employees.
Right.
All right, any additional questions for HR?
Thank you.
Thank you. Then next we'll run through we'll do recorder, accounting, and revenue, since Bobby's already up here, that's on page 6 and 7.
Sure. So the city recorder's office, that's, let me count them up, that's Trish, Sonny. So that's 4 employees. That would be my position. Our finance supervisor would be the second one. We have an administrative assistant would be the third one. And then the city's revenue officer is charged to the city recorder's office. The increase next year in salaries reflects our request for one additional staff accountant. I think that's really important that we do this in order to kind of successfully implement and maximize the Tyler Munis system. It's going to be some pretty significant, it's great software, but great software only works if you got the work processes right. So there's going to be quite a bit of work redo and process changes, and so I think we're going to need that position. In the revenue office, we have 3 full-time employees and 1 seasonal employee during tax season. The big increase for next year unfortunately reflects that over the course of this year, we've pretty much had we've been down 1 person. It's different reasons, right? But we pretty much had a vacancy for most of this year. And so we're budgeting to get back to full staff. My comment about the new accounting position, that's actually in the accounting department on page 7 of 46. other than that, and other than the audit cost, which is recorded in the city recorder's office, the rest of our operating costs is just pretty much routine operations and supplies related, so.
You feel like that additional position, you don't need any more help on?
Well, I'd rather start, I don't know. I know what our we need that position actually. We would have benefited from having that position actually this year. So I think it's a minimum of one. I'd just rather take that approach and see how things go, so. Hopefully, there will be efficiencies gained in the accounting department in our areas from the new computer system. So it's kind of hard to gauge that exactly now.
You want to understand what efficiencies it may drive before you bring another body in?
That's right. And when we think about the new finance system, so the basic financial reporting component, we will be going live on that July 1. However, like we're working on the install of the human resource management component of that involves payroll, it involves HR. That way actually will not go live until January 1 of 24.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually subsequent to that, the property tax billing system is another module that is really, really important. And that's you've got deadlines related to the property tax billing process and a lot of lead time on that install, right? So that actually will not go live until the summer, early fall of 24. So it's kind of how that's going to work. Okay.
All right, any additional questions on recorder, accounting, revenue?
Nope.
All right, go to risk management, which is on page 9.
Good morning.
Good morning, Stacy.
I don't believe I have any major changes anywhere, still same number of employees. No vacancies.
You have still 4 employees. So those numbers we see are just kind of the increases in salary for this year.
Yes.
And you may have been budgeted for 50,000 last year in professional services.
Yeah, that's one of those that I can't predict well because it's got our FEMA consultants in there, so I never know exactly how often I'll have to use them. And also, I had planned last year, or still this year, to get out an RFP for a consultant on the liability and property side. I have not done that yet, but I still intend to do that.
Okay.
So that's what that is for there.
What does a typical consultant's project cost your department?
For like the FEMA side of
Yeah,
things?
any of those you just mentioned, then the property liability.
Okay. The property and liability, I'm not sure. We haven't had that before, but I feel like we could really benefit from that. We've got so many different activities and events and things going on. We've had an increase in that, which is a good thing, but I think we could use some more guidance on that and all the different insurances that we have to have in place. Sometimes there's just a need for some extra information from a professional that can assist in that. And the FEMA consultants, right now we're currently working on some hazard mitigation grants, so we do use them for that. And then if we were to have a declaration of a disaster, a storm, then they would come into play in helping us, assisting us in filing those claims.
And say there, you know, you had another storm where we needed a FEMA, approximately, I mean, best guess, what would that cost be for that consultant?
I believe that their rate is about $95 an hour.
Okay.
And so how many hours they put into it just depends on the claim and how involved that claim is.
Per incident, I got you. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on risk management?
Mayor, if I could, while Stacy's here, if I could refer you guys to, I think it's page 11, the insurance account. A couple of comments here that I know about. This annualized cost will be adjusted. We took the premium payments and annualized them straight out, which we need to correct that, and we'll do that in the next run of the budget. But I looked at this last night, and this is another, when you think about next year's, I'm not sure where we are, but next year's premium cost is something that we need to work with Stacy on to make sure we've got the most current numbers. I know you did some projections and you submitted some notes, and so these, you know, we want to make sure we got the right number for next year, and we'll adjust this annualized. Now, I don't know, Stacy, you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, we're continuing to work. I think,
The numbers for next year aren't final yet,
Yeah,
right? That's what,
yeah.
that's the point I was wanting to make with everybody.
I think we're pretty close.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Okay.
All right, any additional questions for risk management? Stacy? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Move on to purchasing, which is on page 7.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll do a quick overview. We do now have a fully staffed team, 3 full-time, 1 part-time, help with us for our upcoming projects, a lot of ideas and plans we have in place. Other cost points, let's see here. Publicity, since we are getting more bids, proposals out there, we'll have cost of increased advertising. We want to make sure we reach out larger newspapers, both in the Jackson, Memphis, Nashville, or wherever we feel like potential vendors could be. Travel training, 6,000. That's training for me and my staff. Copier expense went up a little bit with all the upcoming projects, events we have planned, and cost of blueprints, getting different packets out there. That cost goes up a little bit. Also maintain the depreciation of our copier, make sure we keep that in good standing. But that's a brief overview, if there's any questions.
So you think publicity is going to increase? Well, we've got a
Right.
smaller number on here.
Yes, well, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the old one. 6,000, it went down a little bit. That cost, we recently reached out in the previous year to some other big vendors for whatever, if it's a big proposal bid, we want to hit maybe a bigger source. So that cost is probably an average of if we have to advertise Nashville, Memphis, Jackson area, where we have potential clients for our vendors.
And then on the salaries, you said we'll be fully staffed with 3 full-time, 1 part-time.
That's correct.
Have we had vacancies, or what is the increase, or are we adding?
We'll have that goes with, you know, of course, the cost of salaries going up, and we now have 3 full-time.
We didn't have that third person for the
Yeah,
full
that third person. It was 2, went to 3.
So similar how we had it in other departments where we didn't have it fully staffed, okay.
That's correct.
Good point to just remind everybody that on all of the salaries right now, something we're continuing to work on, but the salaries for next year do reflect compensation increases per the comp plan, the next step on the comp plan. That would be for all departments.
Yeah,
So,
for this big jump, what you're asking, Councilman, is we weren't fully staffed to start the year, and then we added that person, I can't remember when, sometime in the middle of the year.
Okay.
In your running the department, do you, in your office, do you all reach out to minority businesses and to women-led businesses to try to increase the percentage of business that the city does with those entities?
We do. We make sure, we of course make sure everything's available online for anybody to go on there and get it. But we do have email contacts for people. We also have actively reached out to other chambers. I know we have 5 right now with Humboldt, Hardin, Bartlett, and Crockett that we reached out that they have newsletters, that they actually host our site on there for us, just like the current chamber does. But we do. We have Dawn over there that we send it to. But if you have some other outlets that we can send it to, we're more than happy to be able to send it to them.
Okay, Don McCurry, you're talking about, who's the chairman of the African American Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, sir.
You reach out to him?
Anytime we have one, he'll see our email that goes out to him. But if you have some more contacts, we're always happy to add more to it. So if you, any more outlets that we can get where people can see our stuff, we'll happily send them our information.
As of right now, just off the top of your head, if you can do it, approximately what percentage of business would you say the city does with minority supplier enterprises and women-led enterprises? What percentage would you imagine?
It's a hard number to put on top of my head. I know recently we're going to be awarding some janitorial services, minority and women-owned, but 30% so. That's just off the top of my head. I don't know. I'd have to look all of them and make a.
Okay, would you do that? Because I would imagine, and I don't know, you're the expert on that. I would imagine probably way lower than that, probably less than 5%. But if you would check that out and let me know, I'd appreciate it, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions for Zach for purchasing? All right, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Move on.